Today we are opening the file on a case that, well, it didn't just haunt a single city. It fundamentally changed the collective memory of an entire continent.
Mhm.
We're talking about Australia's most chilling and enduring cold case,
Mhm.
the vanishing of the Beaumont children.
This is really the moment Australia realized that the world could be a genuinely dangerous place, even in broad daylight.
Exactly.
You just can't overstate the cultural shockwave this case created. I mean, nearly 60 years later, this mystery still hangs over Adelaide.
It really does.
The facts are just brutal in their simplicity.
Mhm.
3 siblings. 9-year-old Jane, 7-year-old Arna, and little Grant, who was only 4, vanished.
From Glenelg Beach on Australia Day, January 26, 1966.
In the middle of the day. They were just gone. And this case, it's universally cited as the crime that stole Australia's innocence.
Yeah.
It even drew attention from the FBI in the States. They recognized just how unique the circumstances were.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We're not just going to summarize the tragedy. Our mission here is to trace the decades-long labyrinth of suspects and to really examine the strange intersection of media and justice that the case created.
And the science.
And the science, absolutely. We'll analyze the incredible cutting-edge science they deployed in those final, frustrating search attempts. This is a true crime narrative where, well, the conclusion remains agonizingly elusive.
A perfect storm of hope and disappointment, really.
The day itself was so routine, which I think is the hardest part for people to process. It was a scorching hot day last week of the summer holidays.
Right.
And the children were sent on their own to Glenelg Beach. It was incredibly busy, but you have to remember this was a totally common thing for Australian kids back then.
Completely normal. The tragedy really begins when they miss their bus home, but the real mystery started with the eyewitnesses.
Yeah.
The initial police work hinged entirely on those accounts because there was no scene of a struggle, nothing.
So what did they see?
Multiple witnesses confirmed seeing the 3 siblings at the beach playing, but they weren't alone.
Okay.
They were interacting with an unknown man. And the description was detailed enough to produce some pretty solid identikit portraits.
What did he look like?
Mid-30s, tall, athletic build, suntanned, with light brown hair. And he was wearing these distinctive navy blue swimming trunks with white stripes.
What's so crucial here is the children's body language.
Yeah.
That's what the witnesses all keyed in on.
Exactly. They all said the siblings appeared completely comfortable with him.
Right. Laughing, playing games. This wasn't some forceful abduction that would set off alarm bells. It was just a casual, deceptive interaction.
And that perceived comfort level was immediately confirmed by some physical evidence they gathered very soon after.
At the bakery.
At the bakery, yeah. About 20 minutes after they were last seen on the beach, the kids turn up at a place called Wenzel's Cakes. And they buy this unusually large lunch.
Pies, pasties.
Buns, fizzy drinks, the whole lot. And here's the clincher. 9-year-old Jane paid for the entire order with a crisp £1 note.
That £1 note is just... It's such a devastating piece of the puzzle.
It's huge.
Because their mother, Nancy, had only given them small change, just enough for their bus fare home. But a single pound in 1966 was a lot of money.
Oh, it's the equivalent of about $140 today.
Wow. So this wasn't a quick snatch. This was a transaction.
Uh-huh.
It instantly confirmed that the man had bought their trust, probably using that money as a gift to entice them away quietly.
Exactly. It established his methodology right away. And as the case went cold, investigators realized they needed to look at broader patterns.
They had to connect it to the bigger picture.
They did. They started casting this really wide net, looking for men linked to similar high-profile, multi-victim crimes in Adelaide during that period.
And that search led them to one of the most chilling figures in Australian criminal history, Bev Spencer von Einem.
Mm.
Why was he considered such a viable and frankly terrifying lead in the Beaumont case?
Well, von Einem was an accountant who was already a convicted murderer. He killed a young man named Kelvin, and he was known to frequent Glenelg Beach.
Okay, so the location fits.
The location fits, but the reason he really enters the Beaumont investigation is because of a deeply disturbing confession reported by a credible witness. He's just referred to as Mr. B in the police files.
And what did Mr. B allege?
Mr. B reported that von Einem confessed to picking up children from a beach, taking them home, and performing what he grotesquely called experimental surgery on their bodies.
Oh my God.
He claimed that when one of the children died during this, he killed the others to protect himself and then disposed of the bodies near the Maiponga Dam.
And that testimony made him a prime suspect.
A prime suspect, I mean, despite only being convicted for Kelvin's murder, for which he got a record-setting 36-year non-parole period.
It's the pattern that's so frightening for the investigators. I mean, Von Einem was also connected to the disappearance of 2 other girls?
The Adelaide Oval abductions, yeah. During a football match, this terrible pattern of multiple simultaneous disappearances, it led them to another suspect with a similar background.
And that's where Arthur Stanley Brown comes into the picture.
Right, he was a carpenter from Queensland, and the link here was, well, it was purely visual and behavioral. What was immediately striking was that Brown bore an incredibly strong physical resemblance to the police sketches
Not just for the Beaumont case.
for both the Beaumont case and the Adelaide Oval abductions.
Wow. So he looked the part, but was he actually connected to similar crimes?
He was. Brown was later charged with the 1970 murder of the McKay sisters in another state, but he died before he could be convicted.
Another case where multiple kids went missing at the same time.
Exactly. So for decades, his name, along with Von Einem's, really solidified this idea that a serial predator was at work around Adelaide.
So investigators are chasing these shadows for decades, but the focus eventually shifts. And it shifts entirely toward one man who had been right there in Adelaide the whole time. But before we get to him, we have to talk about a really strange detour this case took into the High Court.
Yes, surrounding a convicted killer named James O'Neill.
It raises such an important question about the role of the media and, public pressure in these cold cases.
It does. So James O'Neill was already serving a life sentence for murder. The Australian Broadcasting Corporation, the ABC, they were planning to broadcast a documentary called The Fisherman.
And this documentary suggested he was responsible for the Beaumont disappearance.
That, or that he was a multiple killer of children in general. So O'Neill sought a court injunction to stop the broadcast, arguing it was conviction by media.
So the High Court is forced to weigh the right to a clean reputation, even for a convicted murderer, against this intense public interest in solving a crime that defined a generation.
That was the core legal battle. Could the media legally discuss these unsubstantiated allegations about a person who's already convicted of other crimes? I mean, the Tasmanian Police Commissioner had publicly said O'Neill was suspected of killing many children.
And O'Neill himself had already confessed to a second killing he was never even tried for.
Exactly. So the court knew formal charges in the Beaumont case were unlikely, but the public interest in knowing what the police suspected was immense.
So if the court blocks the broadcast, the public is left completely in the dark on something of, clear national significance.
And that's pretty much how the High Court saw it. They ultimately sided with the public interest argument. They acknowledged that when you're dealing with someone already serving life for murder who's admitted to other killings, the traditional safeguards protecting your reputation, well, they're considerably diminished.
And this case became a legal benchmark.
A huge one. It really illustrates the pressure that authorities and the media face to provide answers in these huge cold cases, even if it means bending the traditional judicial processes.
Okay, so let's pivot to the man who became the central focus of the modern investigation, decades after all this, Harry Phipps.
This is where the narrative moves from police files to amateur sleuths, which is just fascinating.
It really is.
So Harry Phipps was a wealthy businessman in the area, a known pedophile, and he was identified as a suspect in 2006. But the breakthrough didn't come from old police files. It emerged through amateur investigators and testimony from Phipps's own family.
And the evidence they found sounds like something straight out of a mystery novel. There was this one critical piece of, emotional evidence that gave the lead so much weight.
Absolutely. In 2007, an amateur investigator named Stewart went to visit the home of Phipps's elderly widow, Elizabeth Phipps. And while he's there, he spots this distinct beige clip purse.
And he recognized it.
Instantly.
Yeah.
He recognized it as being identical to the one Jane Beaumont was carrying on the day she vanished. He later described just getting chills, knowing that killers often collect these macabre souvenirs.
That must have been a devastating moment. When the police finally followed up on this, what did the widow say?
She claimed she'd thrown the purse away.
Of course.
But regardless of the purse's fate, that sighting provided this really strong circumstantial evidence linking Phipps to the kids long after his death in 2004.
And we know Phipps frequented Glen Elk Beach, but what was the geographic link that turned suspicion into a major search effort?
He owned and operated the new Castoy factory in North Plimpton. And crucially, the factory site was only about 3.8 kilometers from the beach. It's a very short drive.
Right.
But the most direct lead about the factory came out posthumously in 2013, after a new media push on the case.
And this was a specific memory from 1966.
Yes. Two brothers came forward with a childhood memory. One of them recalled that in January 1966, right around the time the kids vanished, a man who strongly resembled Phipps had asked them to use a smile tractor to dig a suspiciously large hole.
And they remember the dimensions.
He specified it, 2 meters long by 1 meter wide by 2 meters deep, at the factory site. They didn't think anything of it at the time, just a strange chore.
So this lead, over 50 years old, was specific enough to warrant a major excavation in 2018.
Bringing in forensic tech that was, unimaginable back in 1966.
And this must have been an incredibly complex site to search.
Extremely challenging. The ground was just a mess of what scientists call anthropogenic fill.
Meaning man-made junk.
Basically, construction debris, factory waste, mixed soils, all dumped there up to 1.5 meters deep. So they tried the standard tool first, ground-penetrating radar, or GPR.
And the GPR failed, right?
It was severely hampered. GPR sends radar waves into the ground, and it needs consistent soil to create clear images. But in conditions like this, with mixed clay and metal shards, the signal just gets scattered. It's almost impossible to tell a grave from a pile of trash.
So they brought in the newer technology, electrical resistivity tomography, or ER. What made UERT the right tool here?
It's fascinating science. Instead of radar waves, ERT maps the electrical resistance of the ground. When you dig a grave, the disturbed soil, even after it's refilled, has a different moisture content and density.
So it creates an electrical signature.
A distinct electrical signature. And crucially, ERT could look past all that junk, the clay and the metal, because it measures the overall electrical structure, not just simple density.
And the technology did its job perfectly. It delivered a finding that must have just sent a shiver down the investigation team's spine.
It did. The ERT analysis successfully detected a subsurface feature, and the technical report confirmed that this feature was consistent with the, and I'm quoting here, approximate shape, size, and depth of a grave designed to contain 3 small children.
Wow. For the first time in over 50 years, the evidence was pointing to one spot.
It was incredibly compelling. It really felt like this was finally the end of the mystery.
But the excavation, after all that hope, all that science, it just delivered the crushing disappointment that has defined this case for decades.
A heartbreaking moment. The geophysical anomaly was excavated, and while it was a grave-sized pit, it only contained organic and animal remains.
Not the children.
No, it was not the final resting place of Jane, Arna, and Grant Beaumont.
And you think about the immense psychological toll this took on their parents, Jim and Nancy Beaumont. This lack of resolution is just, it's devastating.
It is the central tragedy of the entire saga. Nancy Beaumont passed away in 2019 at 92, and Jim followed her in 2023 at 97. They spent their entire adult lives in that agonizing state of limbo.
They were never able to find their children's remains, never granted the basic closure of a grave to visit.
Never.
And the Beaumont tragedy, as unresolved as it is, it inadvertently propelled forensic science forward in Australia.
Yeah.
These searches, especially at the factory site, they've been instrumental in developing forensic geophysics techniques like ERT.
100%. It helped them figure out how to search for clandestine graves in these really challenging Australian soil conditions. They've even honed the methodology using pig cadavers in experimental sites as human proxies.
The irony is just powerful. The technology and the dedication now exist to perform these incredibly accurate searches.
But the key piece of evidence, the physical remains, they're still missing. The children's disappearance stands as this permanent marker. It was the end of an era of presumed safety for children across the country.
So while forensic science continues to chase the ghosts of these missing children with ever more sophisticated tools, what does this enduring lack of resolution tell us about the ultimate limits of justice?